All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to explore the massive, entirely untapped potential of the tiny, everyday choices you make. We so often convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action. Whether it's losing weight, building a business, or writing a book, we put this enormous pressure on ourselves to make some earth-shattering improvement that everyone's going to talk about. But what if that is completely backward? Through this explainer of James Clear's groundbreaking work Atomic Habits, we're going to see how tiny, seemingly insignificant changes can actually compound into truly remarkable results.
First up, let's talk about the power of tiny changes, or what's known as the aggregation of marginal gains. To really grasp this concept, we have to ask a pretty fascinating question. How exactly do you fix 110 years of absolute failure? Well, let me tell you a quick story. Back in 2003, British cycling was literally the laughingstock of the professional sports world. Since 1908, they had won just a single Olympic gold medal, and in over a century, no British cyclist had ever won the Tour de France. It was so bad that top European bike manufacturers actually refused to sell them gear because they were terrified it would ruin their brand image. Then they brought in a guy named Dave Brailsford. Now, he didn't come in and demand some massive overnight overhaul. No, instead, he looked for just a 1% margin of improvement in absolutely everything. They rubbed alcohol on tires for better grip. They tested out different massage gels to see which led to faster recovery. They even hired a surgeon to teach the riders the best way to wash their hands to avoid catching a cold. And they painted the inside of their team truck white just so they could spot little specks of dust that might degrade the bike mechanics. Sounds crazy, right? But just 5 years later, the British cycling team won 60% of the gold medals at the Beijing Olympics. And over a 10-year span, they secured 5 Tour de France victories and 178 world championships, all from tiny 1% tweaks. Now, if that incredible transformation story hooked you, then welcome to BookVisionary. On this channel, we're dedicated to breaking down the world's most powerful ideas to help you transform your life. Before we uncover exactly how you can apply this 1% rule to your own daily routine, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, share this explainer with your friends, and leave a comment below about a new habit you're trying to build. Oh, and don't forget to turn on the bell icon so you never miss out on mastering your own potential. Okay, let's get back into it. So let's look at the sheer mathematical reality of those marginal gains, because it is fascinating. Habits are literally the compound interest of self-improvement. Check out the math here. If you can get just 1% better each day for one single year, you're going to end up nearly 38 times better by the time you're done. It's just 1.01 to the power of 365. On the flip side, if you get 1% worse each day for a year, you decline almost all the way down to 0. Time essentially magnifies the margin between success and failure. Just a slight shift in your daily habits can guide your life to a completely different destination.
Moving on to Section 2, Systems instead of Goals, and why we are totally playing the wrong game.
We've all been taught that the best way to get what we want in life is to set very specific, actionable goals. But we need to look at the sharp contrast between goals and systems. Goals are all about the results you want to achieve, whereas systems are about the processes that actually lead to those results. Think about it. If you're a coach, your goal is to win a championship. Your system is how you recruit players and run your daily practice. But here is the really crucial point. Goal setting suffers from a massive case of survivorship bias. We constantly look at the winners and just assume that their ambitious goals led to their success. But guess what? The winners and the losers actually share the exact same goals. Every single Olympian wants the gold medal. Plus, achieving a goal is just a momentary change. And honestly, it restricts your happiness because you're continually putting off feeling successful until you cross that finish line. Systems, on the other hand, allow you to be satisfied anytime they are running. This brings us to one of the absolute most powerful insights from the source material. James Clear puts it perfectly. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Seriously, if you want better results, you need to forget about setting goals and focus entirely on your systems instead. Fix the inputs, and the outputs are basically going to fix themselves. All right, Section 3, Identity-Based Habits. This is about changing who you are, not just what you do. To actually change our systems, we need to dig into the psychology a bit and look at the 3 concentric circles of behavior change. The outermost layer is changing your outcomes, like, say, losing weight. The middle layer is changing your process, like starting a new gym routine. But the innermost, deepest layer is changing your identity, your underlying beliefs, and your worldview. Imagine 2 different people trying to resist a cigarette. The first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." Now, they still fundamentally believe they are a smoker who's just trying to be something else. But the second person?
They say, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." That is a tiny shift in language, but it signals a massive shift in identity. Outcome-based habits focus entirely on what you want to achieve. Identity-based habits focus on who you wish to become.
So, the big takeaway here is this. True behavior change is identity change. When your behavior and your identity are completely aligned, you're no longer forcing the change. You aren't pursuing behavior change anymore, you're just acting like the type of person you already believe yourself to be. If you take pride in being a neat and organized person, well, making your bed in the morning isn't some dreadful chore, it's just what you do.
To put this into practice right now, try asking yourself a simple question throughout your day. For instance, if your ultimate goal is to lose weight, stop and ask, what would a healthy person do in this situation? Would a healthy person walk to the store, or would they take a cab? Would they order a burrito or a salad? See, your identity emerges straight out of your habits. Every single action you take is like casting a tiny vote for the exact type of person you wish to become. Now, no single instance is going to magically transform your beliefs overnight, but as those votes build up day by day, the evidence of your new identity becomes absolutely undeniable.
Let's look at section 4, the 4-step habit loop, the actual nuts and bolts mechanics of how habits form.
Every single habit you have follows this exact same 4-step feedback loop: cue, craving, response, and reward. First, you have the cue, which triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. It's basically a bit of information that predicts a reward. Next comes the craving. This is the motivational juice behind every habit. You don't crave smoking a cigarette, for example, you crave the stress relief it provides. Then there's the response, which is the actual physical habit you perform. Finally, the response delivers a reward. This entire cycle is fundamentally an endless loop of trying, failing, learning, and eventually automating. As you run through that 4-step loop over and over again, something pretty magical happens in your brain. It's a process known as automaticity. As you create habits through constant repetition and active practice, the level of conscious activity in your brain actually drops. Your non-conscious mind takes the wheel. You learn to perform the behavior without even thinking about each individual step. What this means for you is that simply putting in the reps is one of the most absolutely critical things you can do to encode a new habit. Finally, section 5. Compounding your success and the paradox of the single coin. There's this famous logical puzzle that goes like this. Can one single coin make a person rich? Obviously, if you hand someone a single coin, you wouldn't say they're rich. But what if you give them another, and another, and another? At some point, you have to admit that one final coin is what tipped the scale and caused them to be rich. Well, the exact same paradox applies to your atomic habits. Can one tiny 1% improvement actually transform your life? In the moment, it really doesn't seem like it. But if you layer those 1% continuously, eventually the scales of your life have to tip. So the most crucial point to take away from this entire explainer is that small habits don't just add up, they compound. In the very beginning, these tiny changes might feel completely meaningless because they just get washed away by the sheer heavy weight of your old systems. But if you stick with it and stay consistent, each improvement acts like adding a single grain of sand to the positive side of a scale. Eventually, you hit that glorious tipping point. The weight of the system completely stops working against you and starts working for you, and that is what leads to remarkable, unrelenting improvements over a lifetime. I want to leave you with a provocative thought to carry with you right now as you go about the rest of your day. Since every action is a tiny vote for the exact type of person you wish to become, I want you to really ask yourself, what votes are you casting for your identity today? Are your current systems dragging you down, or are those tiny atomic habits slowly building the foundation for remarkable results? Start small today, fix your systems, and just watch as those 1% improvements change absolutely everything. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time on BookVisionary.